friends, Chubby Meeple back with another Kickstarter preview for you. Today we're going to be taking a look at the third edition, the new updated edition of Council of Verona. This is from designer Michael Eskew and is going to be published by Bread Circuses. This will be hitting Kickstarter on September the 10th. But I'm going to jump over the table, give you a quick overview of how it plays, and then I'll jump back here and tell you what I think of Council of Verona. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to be demonstrating a 3-player game of Council of Verona. The game plays 2 to 5 players. It plays well at all player counts because you're really, in addition to playing the game, obviously, you're really playing against the decisions that the other players are making. And so while there's a little bit of manipulation of the cards and the board state going on, there's really a little hint of social deduction because you can bluff, but there's definitely some deduction going on in trying to figure out what your opponents are doing. As you can see here, we're looking behind the player screen. This is one of the really cool additions to this third edition of Council of Verona, is that player screens have been included. So there's no more keeping all of your tokens face down and having to peek at them to remember which one they are. Players will be able to keep their influence tokens hidden behind the player screens. Every player will be given, depending on the player count. Now, in a 3-player game that we have here, we won't be using this 4 token, so I'm going to take it out. So in a 3-player game, you're going to be playing with the 0, the 3, the 5, the poison, and the antidote counter. So that is what the P and the A that you see there represent. Because this third edition of Council of Verona, in addition to adding player screens, also adds the poison expansion that was previously a separate expansion, has been added just as standard gameplay here in this third edition. So, for setting up a 3-player game, we're going to take the 13 Council of Verona cards that we have, and these cards all represent characters so you've got things like Lord Capulet, Prince Aeschylus, Lord Montague, Romeo and Juliet are in here, Mercutio, Benvolio, so a lot of the characters from the classic Shakespearean play that are in there. We're going to take these cards, we're going to shuffle them up. In a 2, 3, or 4-player game, we're only going to use 13 cards. There are 4 other cards that get added to this deck if playing with 5 players. For a 3-player game, we simply deal 1 card to each player randomly. Those players, of course, can look to see what those cards are. You then determine a first player. You can do that randomly. So you determine a first player. The first player is going to be given the remaining deck of cards. And they will, from that deck, they will simply pick 1 card and add it to their hand and pass the remaining cards to the player to their left, who will do the same. Take a card out, add it to their deck, pass the deck over. They'll take a card out as well. So in this case, I'm just going to deal out cards. And in a 3-player game, all players are going to end up with 4 cards. So this is going to happen, the deck being passed around, everybody selecting a card, passing the deck, until the last player gets handed 2 cards. They're going to select a card to keep. The final card will get discarded face down back to the box and won't be used for this particular game. Gameplay in Council of Verona is very, very simple. You have to play a card on your turn. I'm just going to move these cards out of the way here. Set these cards up here for that player. So you have to play a card on your turn. And your cards, we'll look at the cards here. You'll notice the art is full color art. It's actually character art. It's not the kind of grays and browns that the old edition of Council of Verona was. So they've really given it a nice, fresh, updated look to kind of bring it up to today's gaming standards, if you will. But the cards themselves, you have character cards that generally will have an ability on them. And then you have what are called agenda cards. So Mercutio here is an agenda card, which has 3 spaces on the side of the card where I can place some of my influence tokens as the game progresses. The agenda cards actually have an agenda on them. So Mercutio, in order for this card to score any influence tokens on it, at the end of the game, there need to be more exiled characters than there are characters on the council. So Mercutio really cares about the number of characters that are in the exile row down here. You'll also notice that the cards themselves will have a family loyalty. So the blue M symbol are loyal to House Montague. You have cards that are loyal to the houses but are also count as neutral cards. You have neutral cards that are there, and then I'll grab this hand because I'm sure I've got, yeah. And then Juliet, of course, belongs to the Capulets. So she has the kind of pinkish color on the cards. So it makes it a little easy to determine. So gameplay, very simple. On your turn, you're going to pick one of the cards that you wish to play. And you're simply going to play it either into the council row or into the exile row. And I have them set up to go rows across the table. I've seen, or we've even played games where we've had these cards sitting side by side and just built the cards, built the columns down. For the purposes of the video, I thought it would be easier to do rows, just so we can fit everything on camera. So I think what I'm going to do is, this is actually a really good hand because Mercutio wants more exiled characters than characters on the council. And I actually have one card that moves a character from the council to exile and one that moves a character from exile to the council. So these may be good cards to hang on to as well. And then Lady Montague's ability is to swap 2 influence tokens. So I'm going to just show you how this works. We're going to play Mercutio, and since he cares about being in exile, I'm going to put him in the exile row. You then have the option, after you've played a card, either the council row or the exile row, to play one of your influence tokens face down. You can play either one of your numbered tokens, you can put an antidote, which is the A token, or you can use the poison token, which is a P token. Obviously, I'm not going to play the poison token on the character that I just played. However, if I suspect that I'm going to be winning this, it might be worthwhile to put this number 5 token on the influence track, and being the first player to do so, I'd get to place it in the first track, which would give me an additional point if this card happens to meet its agenda. If at the end of the game it doesn't meet its agenda, it's not going to score any points, so it won't really matter. I could also, instead of placing my token there, I could also choose to place my antidote token in case someone tries to poison Mercutio over there. But I think what I'm going to do is put this 5 token face down on this +1 space on Mercutio. That is now my turn. Play proceeds clockwise to the left. We're going to move up here to the player up here. This player tokens are red. I'll lift up the screen to show that. So our red player up here is going to be playing, and this red player here, this red player is going to play Prince Aeschylus. Prince Aeschylus reads that for their agenda, Prince Aeschylus wants there to be an equal number of Montagues and Capulets on the council, or at least 4 neutral characters on the council. So we're going to play Prince Aeschylus down there, and then we're going to play a token onto Prince Aeschylus for scoring purposes. Our yellow player is going to do the same, playing a card to either the council or the exile, and then they have the option of activating the option of playing influence tokens. Also, any cards that get played that have abilities on them. So for example, we'll play Count Paris. This ability says to view any 2 influence tokens. And we're going to play this character. No matter where I play this character, I'm helping either agenda at this point, because if I go up here, then we have 2 of the 4 neutral characters required. If I go down here, which is what I'm going to do, then we've got more characters in exile, but there's more game left to be played. I have the ability to view 2 influence tokens. That is an optional. I don't have to do the abilities. None of the abilities on these cards are required. The only thing required to do on your turn is you have to play a card from your hand into either the council row or the exile row. Abilities are optional. Placing an influence token is optional. Count Paris is going to come in here and take a peek and look at these 2 things. So we have the 5 up there. We have what the red player did, which I'm purposely not going to tell you. And then they have the option of playing an influence token if they would like to do so. And at this point, they are going to come in and they are also going to place a token on Mercutio. Now, obviously, I just placed that token. I know what that token was. However, the green player here, who has Mercutio and played the 5 on the +1 space, may think something's going on. They may be a little spooked at this point. I think what we're going to do here, so play is going to proceed around the table with players doing this, playing a card out of hand, and then placing influence tokens. So we're going to go ahead, Lady Montague is going to come on here. We're going to play Lady Montague also into exile. And Lady Montague's ability is to swap 2 influence tokens. So I'm going to play this here, and then I'm going to simply swap the red and yellow tokens without looking at them. I'm just going to swap their positions. So that way, if there was a poisoning that was tried, I may have helped myself. I also, if I go ahead and use my antidote token here on Mercutio, I can guarantee that even if this was a poison token, so that could have been a poison token, that could be a poison token. By swapping the tokens, I could have just moved another poison token into play. It's a safe bet this isn't a poison token because the red player played this card and also put the token on it. So it's a safe bet that's not a poison token, but just in case, I'm going to go ahead and put my antidote marker out. That also fills up Mercutio's card with influence markers, influence tokens, which means unless there's an ability out there that lets people swap influence tokens, which there still are, there are cards in addition to Lady Montague that let people swap tokens. There won't be a fourth token applied to Mercutio at this point because you can't play extra tokens over and above what you have. So we'll come back up here to our red player here. Our red player is going to play... We're going to go ahead and play Lady Capulet up here to the council. Her ability is to swap 2 influence tokens, so we can swap 2 influence tokens. And this red player suspects that the yellow player poisoned Mercutio, so is simply going to swap these tokens back. And then we come back over here to our yellow player. The yellow player here is going to play the nurse. And the nurse is loyal to House Capulet, but is also a neutral character. And her ability says to move 1 character from exile to the council. So by playing the nurse here, and then moving a character up to the council, we're helping ensure that these points don't score down here on Mercutio. So we're going to come down here now. We're going to go ahead and play Benvolio down to exile. Benvolio's ability is to move a character from the council to exile. So we'll play Benvolio down, and we'll go ahead and pull Lady Montague back down to exile. Then we come up to our red player here, who is still wanting 4 neutral characters or an equal number of Capulets and Montagues. He's going to go ahead and play Romeo down from House Montague. Now, Romeo is an agenda card that has an agenda on it in order to score. Romeo's agenda is that Romeo and Juliet are together at the end of the game. So that means the Romeo card and the Juliet card are either both in the council or they're both in exile at the end of the game. And he's going to go ahead and place one of his scoring markers, or one of his influence tokens, face down on Romeo. Our player over here is going to go ahead, really likes what they see here with Romeo being out, because they have the Juliet card, whose agenda is also that Romeo and Juliet are together. So we're going to go ahead and play Juliet out here, and place an influence marker on Juliet to hopefully score. Our green player has their last card, which is Friar Laurence. This has the ability to move a character from exile to the council. We're going to play it down here. We, of course, are not going to move a character from exile to council because that goes against the points we were trying to score. However, we can place an influence token. And we're going to go ahead and take our beautiful little poison token, and we're going to come up here, and we're going to poison Romeo. We're going to poison Romeo up there just to see what happens. See if there's some kind of an antidote or anything can happen. Tybalt here is the last card that our red player has the ability to move a character from the council to exile. And when we're looking up here, it really doesn't do them a lot of good to do that. We're just going to play Tybalt up here. We're not going to use the ability because if we move a character from the council to exile, it's really not setting us up to score up here anymore because we need to have an equal number of Capulets and Montagues. I could pull a Capulet down because, let's do that. Let's pull a Capulet down. Let's play Tybalt down here and pull another Capulet down. So let's pull Lady Capulet down here into exile. And so now we have 4 characters that are in the council. And our red player still has the ability to play a token. They are going to go ahead and play a token right down here. And then our final player is going to play their final card. And they're going to play Lord Montague down here. Now, Lord Montague wants to have more Montagues than Capulets on the council. Of course, it's now 2-2, 2 Capulets and 2 Montagues. And our yellow player can come over here and place a token, an influence token, over on Prince Aeschylus because they see Lord Montague is not going to score anything because there's not more Montagues than Capulets on the council. So they can place their influence marker over here because there are an equal number of Capulets and Montagues. Now the last card's been played. Before the tokens are revealed and agendas are checked, every player in turn order has the opportunity to play one more influence token in turn order so that they can play that. So our green player is going to choose to go ahead and throw their influence marker out here. The red player will play a marker out here. And then our yellow player has the ability to play a marker out here, and they are simply going to do this. So now we're at the end of the game. All players have played all of their cards, and all influence markers have been placed, or at least all the markers that can be placed have been. Any leftover markers, so we see our green player has a marker. There's no penalty for that. They're not worth extra points at the game. So I'm going to go ahead and lay this player screen down so that we can review the cards themselves. The first thing we need to do is we need to flip over the influence tokens and check for any poison, because poison will take effect first. If any characters have been poisoned and don't have an antidote on them, and we'll keep these in player order as well. But if we have any characters that have been poisoned that don't have an antidote on them, or have more poison markers than antidote markers, then that character is killed off and will not count. So we have 3 characters here that do not have any poison on them. Romeo has a poison marker that the green player played. However, the red player saw it coming and played an antidote, so Romeo is fine, which means we have no characters that are killed off. Now comes checking in on the agendas themselves, and it doesn't matter what order we do this in, points are going to be scored cumulatively. So we look at Prince Aeschylus up here. Prince Aeschylus wants there to be an equal number of Capulets and Montagues on the council, or 4 neutral characters. We have 2 Capulets and 2 Montagues, so Prince Aeschylus did succeed in his agenda. However, the red and yellow players both have their 0 tokens on that card. We'll zoom in here a little bit so you can see those a little bit better. So Prince Aeschylus, the red and yellow player get 0 points apiece. The green player put the 3 marker on and put it on the -1 space, so our green player has scored 2 points. We move on to Romeo and Juliet, who both wanted to be together at the end of the game. They definitely succeeded in that. Both characters are alive and both characters are on the council. Our red player is going to score really a ton of points on this because they picked up 5 points from Romeo's card, but also actually 6 points from Romeo's card, 5 for the token, plus 1 for this bonus space. They also grabbed 3 points from Juliet. So our red player is at a total of 9 points, and our blue player is at 4. So after these 3 agendas, we have our green player with 2 points, our red player at 9 points, and our yellow player at 3. We then look at Mercutio, who wanted to have more characters in exile than there are in the council. We absolutely have that. We have a total of 7 characters in exile and only 5 on the council. So our green player is going to pick up 5 points plus the 1 point bonus, bringing them to a total of 8 points. So they are at 8 points. And our yellow player is going to pick up an additional 5 points to go with the 4 they had before. So we have our green player at the end of the game is going to have 8 points, 6 points from Mercutio and 2 from Prince Aeschylus. Our yellow player is going to have a total of 9 points, 5 from Mercutio and 4 from Juliet. So they're at 9 points. And our red player is going to have 9 points, 6 from Romeo and 3 from Juliet. So we have a tie between the red and yellow players at 9 points apiece. Tiebreakers go to the player who was earliest in turn order. So in this case, our red player would be the winner on a tiebreaker. And that is everything you need to know to play Council of Verona. Let's jump back over and I'll give you my thoughts. So that's Council of Verona. Super simple, fast little card game. Love the deduction aspect in it. Very quick to play. As you can see, we went through essentially an entire game in about 15 minutes at 3 players. So it's a very quick game. You can shuffle the cards up, do it again, and it becomes one of those games that even though it's a fast-playing game, you could play it 3, 4, 5 times in a night before you pull out something heavier, or maybe even use this as one of those quote-unquote palate cleansers at the end of the night after you've played the heavier games. What I like about Council of Verona, and I've played the old version of Council of Verona from 2013, had kind of brownish, grayish hues, very Euro-looking, and some would say quite boring looking. Great game, love the gameplay of it. This new edition of Council of Verona brings it into kind of today's terms of board games by adding these new full color cards with some artwork on them, and kind of just upping the production quality, if you will. Games these days have great production quality in them, and this game now is no different. Obviously, everything you saw on the camera were prototype components, so some of that's subject to change. The player boards, the tokens, the cards themselves, everything's definitely subject to change before the Kickstarter is fulfilled, assuming they fund. Don't see why they wouldn't. This is a great little game. Gameplay-wise, love the deduction aspect of this. This is one of those games where it seems very simple on the surface. I'm playing a card, I'm putting a token on a card that either one I just played or a card that's already out, and then we're going to do that until everybody's out of cards, and then we're just going to check and see who scores what points. Seems very simple on the surface. Gameplay-wise in practice, though, becomes a very thinky, definitely a heavy deduction aspect to this. I wouldn't say heavy deduction, but there's definitely a deduction aspect to the game of trying to figure out, what I'm doing. Maybe we saw in the demo or in the video, I had Prince Aeschylus out on the table, wanting an equal number of Capulets and Montagues. Maybe I have a whole handful of neutral players and I'm going for the neutral players as opposed to Capulets and Montagues. Maybe I throw out kind of a bluffing card. I throw Lord Montague out there and I put a 0 token on him so that you think I'm going to go for more Capulets or Lord Montague, I'm going to go for more Montagues on the council. And I played a token out there, you think I'm going for a big score. I threw a 0 out there as kind of a bluff. And now what I actually want to do is get, an even number of Capulets and Montagues, and I come out with Prince Aeschylus later with my 5 token on there and actually score my points that way. So now I've bluffed you, did a little subterfuge, a little bait and switch, if you will. I like that aspect of it. This is definitely a game that I've enjoyed at all player counts. The 2-player game, the first couple times I played it 2 players, I was doing kind of a 2-handed play just to kind of learn it. So I was playing both plays like I did on camera. When I did it that way, the scores were 0-0 all the time. But it's because I knew what the other person was doing and we were offsetting each other, or I was offsetting myself rather. Playing it against another person is a completely different experience. So definitely don't try soloing this like I did. Obviously for the purposes of the video, I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do and had things planned out, so you can kind of get a feel for how the game plays. But when you have an actual human being across the table or multiple human beings across the table, it can get really crazy. I did want to touch on the fact that in the video we played 3 players, so we were only using 13 cards. When you play with 5 players, there are 4 more cards that get added in. They have this little 5 diamond on there under their house symbol. So if you see the little 5s up here, indicating these cards go in. So you have Rosalind here who wants Romeo and Juliet to not be together. So that adds another agenda card in there. There's also the Apothecary. His agenda is that he just wants to be wherever the most people are, and he doesn't count toward that majority. So this can add an extra element if you end up with 6 and 6 people on the council, 6 people in exile. Wherever he is, he doesn't count. So you want to definitely make sure there are more people, but he scores some decent points, or can score some points. And then we have Sampson and Balthazar. Sampson and Balthazar work exactly the same. Sampson here is House Capulet. When you play Sampson, you have the ability to reveal a Montague token that stays revealed the remainder of the game, even as it's moving around cards. That token will stay revealed. And then Balthazar here does the same thing, except he reveals a Capulet token. So some additional gameplay elements come into play when you play 5 players. Overall, a fantastic game. I love the quickness of it. I love how easy it is to teach. Of course, the first couple plays you get, you may be, just overwhelmed, not really overwhelmed, but, focusing on how simple the gameplay is and not really thinking strategy-wise, not thinking people on the other side of the table are bluffing. But overall, I highly recommend this version of Council of Verona, especially if you're familiar with the old version. This new version, in addition to updating the art and giving it a nice, clean, brightly colored look and feel, adds the player screens that you saw in the video. Those are now a standard component to help keep your influence tokens hidden from the other players and just allow you to play more confidently, so that you're not having to, flipping tokens around, accidentally flip one over and reveal it by mistake while you're trying to look at them. So you can just play more confidently of knowing exactly what you have left on the table. You don't have to try to remember any longer what's out there, and everything. The other thing that is added to this third edition of Council of Verona is the Poison expansion. Before, the Poison expansion was something that was separate. If you wanted to have the Poison and Antidote tokens, it was a tiny little expansion that just gave you a few more tokens to throw in. But it's now included as standard gameplay here for this 3rd edition of Council of Verona. So if everything that you saw, if any of that interests you, and it looks like a nice, quick, light game that you can play with friends and family, and either be done with it after 15 to 20 minutes if you'd like, or continue playing it for an hour or so over and over again, setting up a best of style, you could certainly do that as well. Definitely check out the Kickstarter then. September 10th it will be launching, and hopefully already funded by the time you're watching this video. If not, you can jump over there, learn more about it, check it out, check out some of the stretch goals. I know they got some pretty fun stretch goals planned here. I believe one of the first stretch goals is going to be a whole new game, basically using the same gameplay, but more kind of lighthearted, cartoony style characters. So definitely check that out. If you have any questions at all about anything you saw, definitely drop them in the comments below. I will answer those to the best of my ability. And until next time, keep gaming, friends.